screen time, unhealthy body ideals, poor sleep patterns, and depression, social media plays a huge part in young people's lives today. But what can we do to ensure a healthy approach to social media platforms? My name is Jonas Strandell, and this is The Clean Feed, a podcast on how we can make the internet a safer place. Today's guest is the founder of a new social media app. Here to tell us more about this and his journey, we have Claes Mårtén, the CEO and founder of Hummy Social. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Can you shed some light on the name Hummy Social? First of all, Hummy Social, kind of a strange name for those who aren't familiar with what it is.
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting story. We had a name that we started a company with, but we had some backlash on that name legally, and then we reached out to a school here, a communication school in Stockholm, where we wanted to get some ideas on the name, and I think we got like 120 different names, and we narrowed it down to, I think it was 3 or 4. And then I was away on a meditation retreat with some of my friends, and I was talking the night before the big meditation about that we're changing the name. And then after the meditation, we sat for a long meditation for almost 3-4 hours. And afterwards, we're sitting, all of these people are really close friends of mine. And one of my friends, Marianne from Denmark, when we came to her and she wanted to explain what the feeling in her body was, then she said, you know what? I feel hummy. So it was a name that was, when she said that, it was like given to me, of course, because she said it, because it was a feeling of, being with close friends, being safe, and really vulnerable. So when I heard that was a given.
Oh yeah, so it's actually an adjective rather than like a verb or something. It's actually a feeling, if you will. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny with names, because sometimes that's sort of the crucial last part of like your company or an app. We talked previously, starting recording, that I have a background. I come from a company called Pingdom. And Pingdom is like, naturally you think like, oh, kingdom, or like for pings, but it was actually called something else. And the first employee misheard the actual name over the phone, and that became Pingdom later. So it's always kind of interesting to sort of learn the origins of names, if you will. But tell us a little bit more about the app. What do you aim to do?
Well, the first thing that I did when I started, when I had the first initial idea, I was out on my mother's country house, and I had a weekend over, and I didn't really know what to do. And I've been an entrepreneur for many years, and I read an article about TikTok, and in this article it said all these things. They are growing so rapidly, they're making so much money, they're doing really amazing things, and I was like, well, if I had a feeling that there comes like new social media apps all the time, but it really doesn't. Like, it's really hard to get to the top. But then I was like, well, let's try to do something. Like, what can I do? If I were to build a next generation of social media, what would it look like? And then I started looking into the reason and the purpose of why social media is such a big thing. And a couple of things were really clear to me, that, for example, people, from when we're born, basically, we compare ourselves. It's also one of the reasons why human beings are the dominant species on the planet, because we do compare. We do want to educate ourselves. We do want to become a better person, etc. So the comparison part is actually not something that is only bad, but so that was one of the things, because you can then compare yourself to more people than your standard tribe that you had thousands of years ago.
Right.
So that was one thing. And then also people wanted to feel that they had a community. People wanted to have some sort of, connectivity with other people. So the possibility even here to have a possible way to connect with millions of people, no matter who they are and where they're from, is also one of those things, because people need to have a place. People really need to have a place where they belong. So those two things, the comparison part and the need for a place, was super, like, that's why social media exists. So I was like, well, that doesn't really sound that bad. And then I looked into my own background and my thoughts about social media. And I initially thought about the Arabic Spring, where in my mind, Facebook was a tool to democratize countries.
Right.
Which was such an amazing thing. People could get together and do incredible things. So my mind towards social media was actually at that time very positive. And then I stumbled upon a couple of reports. Suicide Zero for one, and that said that 75% of young girls in Sweden that are suicidal says it's due to social media.
Right.
And that became a really big, I couldn't really let it go.
Right.
And then I reached out to different scientists and people who knew way more than I did and asked them, like, what if social media should be and could be something that's very good, why is it the most destructive force on the planet right now?
Mm-hmm.
And, scientists and researchers, they're not always saying only one thing, but what I took out of these things that they were really mutual for all of those people that I talked to was that the passive consumption of social media is the devil in the scenario.
All right.
The passive consumption is what drives mental health issues and other things, while active participation, because that's what they also told me. If you're actively participating on social media, then it could be something amazing. If you look at Arabic Springs, people did something together and that did something powerful.
Yeah.
So the active participation part was what I thought in my mind. Well, if we know that that's the key to create something really unique, why is nobody doing exactly that?
Right.
So that was when I started.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into what I wanted to ask, like, so how does that manifest itself? That sort of comparison, if you will, like how would that manifest itself on a platform we all know and use, like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook? Like, how would you exemplify that?
Super easy. Like today's monetization model is based upon ads. Ads are in grave need of time, and time is if you provide a video or a picture of something that's perfect or unreachable or something that triggers in me, it could be it could be a really, really bad thing. If you show me that video, I will spend more time on it.
Right.
Which means that the whole business model, and I think that's the key to creating something new within the social media space. If you change the way they monetize, then they can start looking into other things. So when I only are shown videos of things that are made for me, like it's put there for me to only watch, I'm going to see people that I should not be comparing myself to.
Right, yeah.
Dalai Lama, he wrote a book about happiness, and he said, like, the only way you can be happy is if you're relative your surrounding. You could be a bit richer than your friends or a bit less rich, but if you become too rich or too poor than your surrounding, then you become unhappy. So of course, if the only thing I see as a young adult on social media is the only rich and beautiful, and I spend so much time looking at that kind of content, that is what I will be comparing myself to.
Yeah.
Which means essentially it will make me unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because in today, like we're chasing metrics, and even as consumers or private, not companies, like as a person, I can just look at how my daughters are using Instagram or something. It's all about like, okay, how many likes did that get? And I've seen examples of when my daughters will post something and then remove that 10, 20 minutes later because they posted it at the wrong time or something. Oh, it's been 20 minutes. I only got 115 likes. And you'll be like, I don't know why that is important, or it sounds great. 115, like, what are you talking about? And I think sometimes that sort of becomes the purpose for many users of social media to sort of get outside approval of what you're creating.
And I think those kind of vanity metrics in that sense is also extremely dangerous. And I just need to say something, which is, I think it was Telenor that did a commercial in Norway, or maybe it was in Sweden, I don't remember, but it was a family sitting in the dinner table, and the girl in the family suddenly becomes really upset, and she runs off, and she runs off to her bedroom and starts crying. And then it comes up a text like, even a like can hurt, because like when you put yourself out there for everyone's approval, you will see, oh, my friend, she got this. I didn't get it. So once again, you compare yourself to people that you should not be comparing yourself to.
Yeah.
And if you look at what unfortunately is happening right now is so many people are trying to look like the ones that they're seeing. Because if I get the 1 million likes by looking with, the plastic surgery, the this and that, the really big car, everyone wants to be what they look at, which means that they will try to do whatever they can to become that.
Right.
And I remember I was dating an influencer a couple of years ago when I started with the idea, and it was so terrifying to see, because 1 hour before she was a bit nervous. She had to make sure that the picture was perfect. And then when she posted, she was like, in a frenzy of like, you couldn't talk to her because like 30 minutes she had to reply to all the comments, and then after an hour she felt bad again.
Right.
Because like beforehand she wanted to get those likes to prove to herself that she was worth something.
Right.
And that's also I like today around 40% of all of the users on social media, they say that they are, after using social media, it's a bad experience. They feel depressed or anxiety.
Right.
And I think that's due to some of these vanity metrics.
Right. So the mental health issue is clearly, like, if not a beacon of light, it's definitely something that you are very conscious of, from what I understand, when you talk about like your app and what you want to achieve. So how do you incentivize users to be like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to chase whatever I'm used to, likes or reposts or whatever it is. I just want to create and put it out there and not worry about like how do you incentivize the users to sort of shift mindset in that?
I mean, if you look at most of those apps that are out there today, it's a chase for dopamine.
Right.
You want to get the quick dopamine all the time, and that's extremely draining. There are other substances in the brain that you could actually get, like serotonin or oxytocin. It's harder to get, but what our aim is, and especially with our new version of the app that we're releasing in a month, what we're aiming to do here is how can we add other things, other substances to the brain, so we don't have to have people being addicted to dopamine.
Right.
We can get them over to our platform, and then they can start becoming possibly then addicted to something that they actually feel good about.
Right.
So it's like going to work out. Like in the beginning, it might be a bit tough, but when you're in it, then you're in it, and then you can become addicted. But obviously not too much. But it's really good to be addicted to something like working out instead of eating, 5 bags of chips every day.
Right.
So we're trying to make a shift in how we reward people for participating, really.
Yeah, right. That sounds very, very interesting, and a really interesting take on like how to sort of combat those issues that we talked about before. In terms of like acquiring users and the more like business aspect of things, like can you share just a little bit on like how do you go about standing out in this landscape of apps? Like, I mean, it must be, from my standpoint as a CMO, it must be a really interesting challenge to be like, yeah, how do I promote this app and the positivity that you're talking about? What's in it for me? I mean, I don't get any likes, or I don't get any comments or reposts. Like, how do you like position yourself marketing wise there?
Yeah, so speaking a bit about what we're doing right now is we're trying to create an app that's purely built upon, our core is really increasing social interactions, not only posting videos, but increasing social interactions. And these kind of things, social interactions, they happen all the time. So I can one example, when I was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, people came up to me and talked to me like, hey, who are you? People that I would never meet normally, like, billionaires, like super powerful people. I didn't even know what I was doing there. But people came up to me and started talking to me because people crave social interactions. And at that place, when we were at the World Economic Forum in Davos, it was a context that people were there for the World Economic Forum in Davos. And since there was a context, a safe space, so to speak, then people started interacting. So what we're essentially doing here, we're creating a safe space for people to socially interact. And a context could be a family chat. It could be a group of people that loves to do gardening in their home. It could be so many different things. So what we're really providing to the users and what we're aiming to provide is a better experience that what they're getting today. So essentially looking at different groups or different context or different possibly like lack of digital spaces for people to hang out with.
Right.
So when we approach these groups, hey, do you know what? We can make your experience better. Whatever the context is, if this is a context that's a group of friends, or if it's a concert, or if it's a group that talk about cars, we have a new technology that makes it possible for us to compete on every level where we can look at that specific context. You're interested in football. How can we put in features to perfectly match the context of what you're aiming for to do? So we can really, when we're interviewing a lot of groups right now and different communities, we're essentially saying, like, do you want, if you're engaged with this, do you want to have an even more engaging platform where your interest or your context can thrive better than they can on the current platforms?
Yeah, that's really well put. Really well put. All right, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about the flip side of creating content. And user-generated content not only come with the good sides of content, that where we talk about the upside, the positivities that we discussed previously, but there's also the flip side. As soon as you allow people to create and upload and interact with each other, there will be bad actors. Let's call them that. Who will upload things? Who will be vile in their postings? And can you share just a little bit on, like, it must be a huge undertaking technically also to sort of take care of everything, like make sure that these things don't reach the general public. Share a little bit of that. Like, how do you? I don't want to use the term moderate because it's very self-indulgent, but can you share a little bit on, like, the technical aspects of that?
Yeah, so the technical aspects of it is, like, there are obviously, like, with we know this, of course, but with ChatGPT and with internet, of course, we know a lot of things. We know what a gun looks like. So in terms of pictures and stuff like that, we know, and even if it's not always 100%, we can use a lot of the existing data, metadata from Google, etc., to make sure to send everything through a filter to see that we don't get anything bad out of it. But one thing that I think is really important when it comes to the bad side of social media, and when I started thinking about this, I became really upset, because when you look at, for example, comments, first off, it's quite interesting. Why is it called comments? Comments is always something judging. It could be a good comment or a bad comment, but it's judgment. Judgment is put here from it's a feeling of fear, which is something really powerful, which drives time. When I get comments, and especially bad comments, that's put there. And the reason why they're still there and why the big companies are not really taking them away is because they want to get more time. Right. The more bad comments, the more bad behavior the platform allows, the more time is spent on the platform. But what if time is not the primary reason to make money? Like, if you can monetize in a different way, right, where you can monetize engagement, true engagement, where true engagement is really based upon if people feel safe and they feel that they can contribute without getting the judgment, that will increase the true engagement. So, for example, we were talking about maybe we shouldn't have it. We do have, well, comments, but why don't we call it an answer? Right. What is a comment? It's something that I give to you. But if I reply, if I answer something on what you did, it starts creating a dialogue. And a dialogue is something that even if I were to say something bad, if I just know that this is a dialogue, it doesn't really have the same effect.
Right.
And we aim to do something more from the inside out. If I'm extremely passionate about books, well, if I find my place where I can talk about books, we do it from a place of comfort. We do it because I found a place where I can feel safe. I found a place where I do something together with other people that I like, that we have something mutual.
Right.
And since we only do that, I think we will get to a better place where, I mean, if we have something in common, well, then we'll talk about those things more.
Yeah.
And then it will be also self-moderating. If we create a platform where the users, like, you can report stuff, of course, that's one thing. But like having the user being the judge in terms of what's okay and not. And then also like, we're looking into like, how can AI moderate?
Yeah.
If we, for example, have this book club on Facebook, for example, if you have a book club, you can write the rules, but then you will have to manually by yourself, like, this is not good, this is not good, this doesn't belong here, this doesn't belong here. What if we can do that through AI?
Yeah.
If I say that this group is about Pokemon the first edition, and then suddenly people are starting talking about Pokemon the second edition, well, then with the power of AI, we can sort that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But essentially, the reason why I think social media has become such a bad place is due to the monetization.
Right.
That they're actually making money out of that bad behavior.
Yeah.
And as soon as you make money on it, then you want that behavior to thrive, even though they don't say it.
Yeah.
And they do take away a lot of stuff, but they could do even more.
Yeah. There's an interesting example that I wrote a little bit about a few weeks ago. Is the fact that there's actually now Chrome extensions have artificial intelligence commenting on posts on LinkedIn, for instance. Like you can have someone just pretty much mansplaining or agreeing what the original poster said. They say, "Hey, Claes, I agree completely. This is a really important topic. You should like to sort of further enhance that sort of engagement." And that's built upon like OpenAI tech, which makes it kind of interesting that Microsoft is sort of eating its own tail with owning LinkedIn and being the major investor in OpenAI. So they're sort of creating sort of problem for themselves with creating the possibility of using AI in that sense that they just want to have, like you say, eat time of the original poster, who's all of a sudden being bogged down with hundreds of comments that are absolutely useless. So he or she needs to spend time wading through, like, is there someone here who actually wants an answer or a follow-up question or something? And it's completely useless. And it's just interesting to see how like that time is being spent doing nothing. Really, really interesting though. But I also wanted to touch just a little bit of like you talked about the need for like another social media with positivity and like, can we talk a little bit about like the responsibility that you as a owner and CEO of a platform has in terms of that sort of mental health issues and the users of social media? I would say that demography for the users would be what, 18 to 35 or something like that, or do you say that it's a broader audience that you're looking at?
Yeah, we are actually looking at a broader audience.
All right.
We're more looking at what people lack in their life and trying to contribute with that specific thing. With that said, we have a huge responsibility. And I think what's happening right now all over the world with all these companies being sued and TikTok might be banned in the US, it's a natural way because they have not taken responsibility.
Yeah.
This needs to happen, and we have to remember that this is really the first generation of social media that became something global. You had some companies before as well, but this is the first generation, and they have been allowed to monetize exactly how they want, and then this is the result. So I think there's a huge responsibility for those companies and the people working at those companies, but also for companies like my company. And I have a huge responsibility into creating a platform that is not only going to talk about the differences, but also walk the walk, not only talk the talk.
Yeah.
Because something needs to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an adult sitting on the sideline right now and looking at everything that's happening and say to myself, I could have done something, but I did not do it.
Yeah.
And I did not give it everything that I had.
Yeah. And I think TikTok is an interesting topic in itself that we could talk probably hours and hours on. I mean, it's an entertaining platform if you just want to like learn how to cook or like, I know I enjoy like some instructions on how to clean better. There are some amazing things like, oh, you can mix that with that and you can actually clean your house with something, and you learn all that. But also, I mean, there is the flip side to that. You have your self-harm issues, the live streams that goes very, very wrong. But also, I think there's also this safety aspect of things and why TikTok might be banned. As you say, in America, they're collecting a ton of information from users that I don't think we talk about at all. And I wanted to just very high level get your opinion on like TikTok and the ban in the USA. Will they actually ban it, you think? Or do you think like, well, you know, it might be something that they might be agreeing on the keep it on?
There's a huge issue with getting it banned in the US. I mean, obviously there's a technology war going on that's really intense between the US and China. And I mean, I think that they will try to ban it, but I also think that it will then come to a point where some people will buy it.
Right.
I don't think it's going to disappear and then don't exist in the US market.
Right.
Why would they?
Yeah.
Even though it's a very tough decision for the Chinese to leave it, since they are getting a lot of information from it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it will happen. But I don't know, that technology war is super interesting to see from the sideline.
Maybe not have TikTok on your phone if you're a government employee. That's
No, and there's a reason why there's this. I wouldn't say it's a disease, but there's a thing that you say TikTok brain, and it's a lot of researchers that look at the way you use TikTok it's worse than it's on Reels, and the TikTok brain is essentially when you look for a certain amount of time and more, you can see how the brain matters, and the brain matter is changed. Right. Especially in young kids. So you have the gray matter, I think it's called, where it's basically the plasticity in the brain that allows you to learn stuff. But the more time you spend on TikTok, the less that matter becomes. So essentially what you're doing, because if I were to do it, it's not good for me. But if I'm gonna spend a lot of time on TikTok, if I not have my brain fully developed, it can really have a massive impact on my brain over time, like for the rest of my life, because the brain matter that I need in order to grow my brain is actually changed. Yeah. So TikTok brain is a thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell that to my kids. That's gonna be
I mean, and that's the thing. Like there's so much negativity here, and it doesn't have to be like social media could be something so much better, but the monetization model ruins it. The reason why, I mean, if you were to see a girl on TikTok and she's standing right in front of you, that's one image, and then the one next to it would be like she puts her bum a bit out into the open, so you have more pixels that shows like, oh, it's more of a female form here. That will be taking into consideration when showing the video. So the more you push out your butt, the more you do this, the less close you have, the more pixels that are colored like skin, like the more time it will actually get. Yeah. And since that's how it runs today, the only thing that I will be seeing if I'm a young girl is that thing. Mm-hmm. Or a young guy, it's that thing. Yeah. Which really destroys the perception of reality.
It does. It's essentially a much worse way of sort of distorting reality than watching a romantic comedy or romantic movie. It's like, oh yeah, this is what love is, or this is what relationships are. Because when you go online on certain social media, you get a perception of reality that it's not like that. Let's just put it out there. It's not like that. That's not reality. That's not what it is. That's because, I mean, there are filters and there are like AI things that you can put on top of. Like we've all used them to try them out. But it is interesting to see how that skews the brain of especially young people who don't really know how to sort of critically look at something that they're seeing. And I have a kid at home who will claim anything over dinner table, like because he saw something on YouTube Shorts, and he will just like claim that as truth. And you have to sit down and you have to talk like, well, did you ask yourself why, or did you like, how did that happen? And it's important for us as adults and parents also to have that conversation with the young kids who are just now getting into social media.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Claes, for joining us. And if anyone is interested in talking to you, taking more of your time that we just talked about, where can they find you? LinkedIn maybe, or somewhere else?
LinkedIn is a good place to find me, for sure. Yeah. I'm not, I don't have a TikTok account. I have an account to snoop, but I'm there maybe 1 minute a week. Yeah. So TikTok, LinkedIn is a good place. Yeah. Protect your TikTok brain. Exactly. Wear that helmet. So go look up Homie Social on LinkedIn and find you and connect with you there. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.